On January 9, 2026, a photographer standing on a pier in Bahrain captured an image that should have ended a 40-year chapter in U.S. Navy history. 4 warships were being loaded onto a semi-submersible heavy-lift vessel called MV Seaway Hawk. The ships were wooden-hulled, slow, unglamorous, built in the 1980s. They had spent 3 decades doing one of the most dangerous and least celebrated jobs in naval warfare, finding and destroying naval mines in the Persian Gulf. Their names were USS Devastator, USS Dexterous, USS Gladiator, and USS Sentry. They were on their way to the Philadelphia Navy Yard to be scrapped. Vice Admiral George Wyckoff, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, gave a farewell address. For more than 3 decades, these ships have been critical to maritime missions around the globe, he said. What a proud legacy you leave in your wake. The transition was complete. Their modern replacements, 3 Independence-class Littoral Combat Ships equipped with advanced unmanned mine countermeasure systems, had arrived in theater. The Navy had officially declared the Avenger era in the Middle East over. 37 days later, Operation Epic Fury began. 49 days after those 4 wooden ships left Bahrain on a cargo vessel heading for Philadelphia scrap metal, Iran started laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. When the Navy looked around for its mine-clearing capability, 2 of its 3 replacement ships were photographed 5,000 kilometers away in Malaysia. The third was somewhere in the Indian Ocean, and the 4 decommissioned ships that actually worked were sitting at an inactive maintenance facility in Pennsylvania. What happened next is one of the most revealing stories of the entire conflict, because on April 8, 2026, 2 U.S. Navy Avenger-class minesweepers, USS Chief and USS Pioneer, were photographed arriving in Singapore. By April 10th, they were heading west through the Strait of Malacca. The ships the Navy had scheduled to die were racing toward the hardest mine-clearing mission America had faced in 35 years. The problem: Iran's mine strategy. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Iran actually did to the Strait of Hormuz, and why it did not need a single surviving warship to do it. Iran is estimated to possess between 5,000 and 6,000 naval mines. It does not need to deploy all of them. It does not need to deploy most of them. It needs to deploy enough that no commercial operator's insurance underwriter will sign off on a Hormuz transit without verified proof that every square meter of the shipping lane has been physically inspected and cleared. CBS News reported in March 2026 that Iranian forces had seeded Maham 3 and Maham 7 mines in and around the strait. Intelligence assessments, confirmed by multiple U.S. officials and cited by the MiG Flug analysis, estimated between 1,000 and 3,000 mines laid since the conflict began. The dominant type appears to be the Sadaf 02, a 600 to 900 kilogram contact mine tethered by chain to the seabed and floating just below the surface, invisible to satellite imagery and waiting to detonate when a hull makes contact. Iran also had influence mines, devices that sense the acoustic or magnetic signature of a passing ship and trigger remotely, without physical contact. The economic logic of mine warfare is the most asymmetric exchange ratio in modern conflict. One Sadaf 02 costs approximately $100,000 to manufacture and deploy. Clearing a single confirmed mine costs an estimated $1 million in helicopter time, diving operations, explosive ordnance disposal personnel, and vessel support. The math is deliberately brutal. A nation that cannot defeat the U.S. Navy in open combat can impose an indefinite, economically catastrophic closure of the world's most important oil corridor at a cost ratio of 1 to 10. Iran learned this lesson watching 1988. The Iranian M08 contact mine that blew a 15-foot hole through USS Samuel B. Roberts. During Operation Earnest Will cost approximately $1,500. The ship's repair bill was $89.5 million. The damage to global shipping confidence was incalculable. By March 2026, tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz had collapsed to fewer than 10% of normal daily volume. Major shipping companies including Maersk, CMA, CGM, and Hapag-Lloyd had suspended all Hormuz transits indefinitely. Lloyd's List Intelligence tracked 6 transits on one Wednesday in April, against a pre-war baseline of 138 per day. Over 500 to 700 vessels, over 10,000 deadweight tons sat stranded in the Persian Gulf. CENTCOM struck 44 Iranian mine-laying vessels. The mines those vessels already deployed remained in the water. Iran did not need its navy to do this. It needed time and the willingness to use a weapon that cost less than a used car to place and required months of careful, dangerous work to remove. Strategic setup. The ship that was supposed to replace everything. The story of why the Navy was unprepared for this moment begins not in 2026, but in the late 1990s, when defense planners began designing the platform that was supposed to make the Avenger-class obsolete. The Littoral Combat Ship program was built on a concept that was intellectually sound and operationally appealing. Rather than maintaining specialized single-mission ships, dedicated minesweepers, dedicated submarine hunters, dedicated surface warfare vessels, the Navy would field a fast, modular platform that could swap mission packages based on operational requirements. One hull type, multiple roles. The mine countermeasure package would replace the Avenger-class. The Navy would get a more capable ship and a more flexible fleet. The Avenger-class ships were purpose-built for mine warfare. Their hulls were oak, Douglas fir, and Nootka cypress, chosen for flexibility, strength, and low weight, sheathed in fiberglass to reduce magnetic signature to near zero. They deployed towed minesweeping gear that mimicked the acoustic and magnetic signatures of larger warships, causing mines to detonate prematurely at a safe distance. They carried high-frequency sonar for bottom mine detection and tethered remote-operated vehicles for identification and neutralization. They were 224 feet long and displaced 1,312 tons, small enough to operate close to minefields in shallow coastal waters, wooden enough to drive through them without triggering the devices they were hunting. They were slow. They had limited self-defense capability. They could not launch MH-60 helicopters. They were unglamorous. And they worked. The military limitation. What the tests showed and who ignored them. The problems were not secrets. They were published in official government reports by the Pentagon's own Director of Operational Test and Evaluation, repeated across multiple budget cycles, and documented in congressional testimony. The question is not whether anyone knew. The question is why nothing changed. The unmanned influence sweep system, the drone boat that tows acoustic and electromagnetic generators to detonate mines, was assessed in 2022 with an operational availability of 29%. The Navy's own defined minimum threshold for mission-capable systems was higher than that. The 2025 DOT&E report assessed the system as not operationally suitable. The airborne mine neutralization system, deployed by helicopter to destroy identified mines, cannot neutralize most of the mines in the Navy's threat scenarios, according to the 2016 report, a finding the subsequent decade of development had not materially improved. In May 2025, 9 months before the war started, the head of the Navy's Mine Countermeasures Technical Division gave a briefing to international naval observers in the United Kingdom. Hunterbrook Media obtained the slides. Each drone boat mission required over 4 hours of pre-mission maintenance and 1.5 hours of GPS and sonar calibration after launch. Multiple hunt missions during exercises had been conducted where the sonar failed to record data, and crews had no indication of failure until post-mission analysis. In the Southern California training exercises, the primary practice minefield sat 1 mile from the U.S.-Mexico maritime border. On one occasion, a drone boat from USS Tulsa ran away toward Mexican territorial waters and could not be recovered. The briefing officer described the scenario himself. "I'm going to get demarched by the Mexican government." The 2025 DOT&E report was the most direct. The Navy had conducted no operational testing of the Independence variant LCS with the MCM mission package in fiscal year 2025. Operational effectiveness cannot be determined due to insufficient performance data. Researcher Ethan Connell of the Taiwan Security Monitor summarized the implications for the Strait of Hormuz specifically. The LCS-MCM package showed visual mine detection failures, even in the relatively benign turbidity of SoCal waters. The Strait of Hormuz is not Southern California. It is turbid, warm, with temperature and salinity layers that complicate sonar propagation, and with the added complication of hundreds of anchored commercial vessels creating acoustic clutter in exactly the water column the mine hunting sonar needs to read clearly. Despite all of this, in September 2025, the 4 Avengers in Bahrain were decommissioned. In January 2026, they were loaded onto a heavy lift ship and sent to Philadelphia. The same month, USS Canberra sailed alongside the Seaway Hawk as the Avengers departed. A photograph that Navcent released, apparently without recognizing its symbolic significance. The LCS was escorting its predecessors to their death. On March 12, 2026, with Iran already mining the strait and the world demanding to know how the United States would clear the waterway, a U.S. Navy official told Military Times, "The Navy has no plans to recommission any Avenger-class mine countermeasures ships." The 4 Avengers were in Philadelphia. The 4 ships the Navy still operated in Japan were the last of their class. They were also scheduled for decommissioning in the coming years. Their clocks were already running. The solution: the ship scheduled to die. USS Chief and USS Pioneer were not the ships the U.S. Navy wanted to send to Hormuz. They were built in 1994, the last production Avenger-class vessels. They had been forward deployed to Sasebo, Japan, for years, assigned to the U.S. 7th Fleet in the Pacific. Their mission was regional mine threat response in a different theater entirely. And like their 4 now scrapped sisters, they were on the decommissioning schedule, a timeline that existed because the Navy's official position was that the LCS had made them obsolete. On April 8, 2026, ship spotters photographed USS Chief and USS Pioneer in Singapore. They had transited the South China Sea. On April 10th, they were photographed heading west through the Strait of Malacca. Their destination was not officially disclosed. Their course was not ambiguous. The war zone, which had been tracking the LCS situation since the war began, stated the obvious. Their movement represents half of the Avenger-class ships still in Navy inventory. Stars and Stripes confirmed from marine traffic data that their course aligned directly with CENTCOM's statements about mine-clearing preparations in the Strait of Hormuz. A 5th Fleet spokesperson declined to confirm their destination. On the same timeline, USS Tulsa, one of the LCS ships that had been in Singapore for weeks, was also photographed heading west. The Navy was assembling every mine countermeasure asset it possessed and sending it toward the same corridor. But USS Chief and USS Pioneer carry something the LCS does not. Their hulls are fiberglass-sheathed wood, oak, Douglas fir, and Nootka cypress. They generate almost no magnetic signature. They can operate inside a minefield without triggering the devices they are hunting. Every LCS, by contrast, is aluminum, a metallic ship with a measurable magnetic signature significantly larger than the mines beneath it are calibrated to detect. Retired Captain Sam Howard, who commanded the USS Raven mine hunter, told Military Times that during his Gulf deployments, the systems he operated were not intended to be used in the conditions where they were used. They worked anyway. His point was about institutional knowledge, the accumulated expertise of crews who had run the actual equipment in the actual water, learned its failure modes, and adapted. USS Chief and USS Pioneer have that knowledge. Their crews have exercised in real minefields. Their systems have been tested against real mine signatures. The LCS-MCM package has not been operationally tested at all. The bigger implication. The MIG-FLUG analysis, published in late April 2026, assessed that intelligence estimates placed between 1,000 and 3,000 Iranian mines laid since March. One mine costs $100,000 to place. Clearing one mine costs $1 million. To prove the entire strait clear and restore commercial shipping confidence, every mine must be located, classified, and neutralized. The Washington Institute estimated years before the conflict that clearing Hormuz could require up to 16 dedicated MCM vessels. The U.S. Navy sent 2. The KUA defense analysis identified the broader picture with precision. Not only did the U.S. retire its 4 Gulf-based Avengers in September 2025, but the Royal Navy simultaneously withdrew its last mine countermeasure vessel, HMS Middleton, from Bahrain in early 2026, transported home on a heavy lift ship because it could not make the voyage under its own power. No replacement was sent. The combined US-UK mine countermeasure presence in the Gulf at the start of the conflict was 0 wooden-hulled ships and 3 metal-hulled LCS vessels, 2 of which were in Malaysia. The Naval Institute's April 2026 Proceedings article described the net result with the measured language of professional journals straining against institutional courtesy. The current conflict has exposed the yawning gap in USMCM capability. The decision to retire the Bahrain Avengers in September 2025 was made according to a procurement schedule established years earlier. It was rational within the logic of that schedule. The LCS program had promised a replacement that was objectively superior on paper. The fact that the replacement had an operational availability rate of 29% for its sweep system, had never been operationally tested, and had a drone boat that ran into Mexican waters during training exercises was information that existed in published government reports and had not changed the decommissioning timeline. What changed the timeline was Iran mining the strait. The 4 scrapped ships in Philadelphia cannot be sent. The Navy said so explicitly. No plans to recommission. Recommissioning requires shipyard work, crew assembly, systems reactivation, and time the mission does not allow. The only Avengers that could sail to Hormuz were the ones still breathing. USS Chief and USS Pioneer, slated for decommissioning themselves, already old, already at the end of their service lives, already past the point where the institutional calculus of a modern naval procurement system said they should be replaced. The Navy sent them anyway, because there was nothing else. The MV Seaway Hawk carried 4 Avengers to Philadelphia in January 2026, and Navy Vice Admiral Wyckoff gave his farewell speech about proud legacies and standing watches. 37 days later, the strait was mined. 90 days after that speech, the Navy was routing the last of the same class of ship through the Strait of Malacca at best possible speed, heading toward the mission the retired ships were built to perform. The ship the Navy scheduled to die is racing toward the hardest mine-clearing mission in 35 years. Its wooden hull floats over mines that would trigger on the aluminum ships it was supposed to have been replaced by. Its crew has operated real minesweeping equipment in real conditions, not in test ranges off San Diego. Its towed sweep gear will generate signatures to detonate Iranian mines at safe distances without needing a drone boat that can reach Mexican waters if left unattended. It was scheduled to die. The Strait of Hormuz needed it to live. That gap between what a procurement schedule said was obsolete and what an actual mine threat corridor needed in the water is the gap that 30 years of defense budget choices, operational test reports nobody acted on, and a transition plan executed 6 weeks before the war it was designed to address created. USS Chief and USS Pioneer are steaming toward it.